Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Pat Evans with us from LegalSportsReport.com to go over the very latest in sports betting. We'll see if Missouri can get their act together and ever get sports betting on the ballot. That decision is coming, so we got Pat to talk about that. Pat, thanks again for coming on the show. Great to catch up with you. Hope you had a good weekend.
Thanks as always, Craig. I think we're on a little bit of a delay because of my terrible internet connection today, but hopefully people are okay with that, and we'll get through it here now.
All right, let's get started. Let's talk about the ever-growing and changing landscape of Canada and sports betting there. Our first focus here is Alberta. Let's begin with Jay Snowden, the CEO of Penn, having some very intriguing words on what the future may look like there.
Yeah, so it wasn't that long ago that Penn, Jay Snowden is the CEO of Penn Entertainment, they spent $2 billion on the Score, a very well-known Canadian sports, entertainment brand, however you want to put it, with a sports betting arm. They spent a lot of money on that, and then they took them out of America, where they had a little bit of a endeavor, but very little market share. And so now we're going, and they're laying, what they can do in Ontario was huge with the Score from all signs. And now they're looking at Alberta, which, we've talked about before on this show, that Alberta is going to open up. It's a very small province in comparison to Ontario. The population's tiny, but there's a lot of betting going on there. There's a lot of casinos. There's a lot of people who like to bet, from what I gathered at the Canadian Gaming Summit last 2 months ago now. And there's a lot of people very bullish, including Jay Snowden and Betway, a brand that just pulled out of the U.S. or will be pulling out of the U.S., but they're going to stay in Canada, and they see big things in Alberta too, because a lot of brands have been okay with what's happened in Ontario. And they see Alberta going ahead and taking exactly that model and putting it in Alberta, and, really benefiting from a public that likes to bet on sports and bet in general. I mean, one of the people at the Canadian Gaming Summit a couple months ago pointed to the Oilers playoff 50-50 raffles. During the regular season, they were, $4 million or something like that. Nothing huge. It got up to $12-16 million during the playoffs from their anecdotes, which is pretty wild if you think about that. And coming away from a game with half of that, that'd be okay. But that just shows that they're very excited about the prospect of being able to bet on their teams. I would think just going to a game and throwing down some money just because of a raffle. But there's lots of teams there. There's the hockey teams. There's the Canadian football teams. There's, of course, the NFL. Everybody loves the NFL. So a lot of opportunity in Canada, and brands are already talking about Alberta being the next frontier there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that our fourth quarter story of the year is going to be focused on the sports betting changes, I think, in Canada, maybe even more here than the U.S. All right, well, one change in the legislature in Missouri is that this guy who's just totally against sports betting there is not going away. So the deadline is tomorrow. So, Pat, what's going to happen tonight? Well, I mean, I'm getting ready here. Should we just buckle up, get some popcorn, and get ready for, filibustering to the end again?
No, so thankfully we're not talking about the legislative route this time. That's the good thing for Missouri. We're talking about the ballot here. They've had this ballot initiative. The Cardinals came out, said, we're going to go around Senator Denny Hoskins, the man you're talking about, who has filibustered at length at times, including an 8-hour reading of Ronald Reagan's biography. That was a wild night, as you can imagine. But so this has been in progress since last fall. They got 300 and some thousand signatures. All they needed was 170, but those were all certified by local election boards. That had to be done by earlier this month. By tomorrow, the Secretary of State has to verify all those signatures. What's the difference? I'm not entirely sure, but it's all part of this very specific process that needs to be done. If that's verified and all good to go, it will be placed on the ballot in November. Now, here's where it gets kind of crazy, and what I've been hearing from sources, nothing official yet, because if you're going to go against it, you have to file something with the Secretary of State, and you start seeing the opposition there. But there is a significant opposition party kind of floating about that people say could make a huge dent. I am working on a story and hopefully get some real verified sources here, and we can talk about it next time I'm on. But it could be a real danger to this ballot initiative come November, because it is a significant player in the industry in Missouri. So that's a big thing that's kind of floating out there. Now, the good thing for this ballot initiative is FanDuel and DraftKings are all in and trying to get it done. One source suggested that they might try to drop out because, the polling's not super great. It might be kind of a toss-up at this point in terms of what the vote will be in November. And so they're saying if you swing and miss, you're done. If the public support's not there and they show it and demonstrate it at the polls, then you go into the next legislative session, and the people who were supportive of it in the legislature, not named Denny Hoskins, will say, well, you know what? The public didn't want it. Why are we going to put so much effort to get it done? So Missouri remains this just fascinating state of what could happen. A couple people have made great points. DraftKings and FanDuel are multi-million dollars into this endeavor. So why would they just drop it? Because it's, there might be some opposition. Mm-hmm. Again, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's going to definitely be a couple interesting months. To your point, Q4, I mean, Canada right now has the only market on the, launch pad, I guess you would want to call it. Missouri could be there if it passes in November. But so that's kind of all eyes on Missouri when you're looking at U.S. sports betting, and kind of the optimism of the industry is right now is kind of laying on that state.
Yeah, I would agree. And a state that, again, has had its opportunities to legalize sports betting has fallen short. Kentucky, not as much. Kentucky often running with sports betting, and naturally, we've gotten some numbers here. Jim Ghazali was on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about the success that Kentucky has had. Circa Sportsbook is now having a physical location in Kentucky. What's this all about? Why is Circa taking their talents like LeBron to Kentucky? I didn't see this coming.
So I think there's a few things here. One, talk about a state that surprised us all, unlike Missouri. They kind of skirted through it in the legislative session a few years ago and got it done and then launched. And to your point, it's been very successful for the state. And I don't think that's necessarily a big surprise. They're big in horse racing, and they've got plenty of pedigree in that, no pun intended. But Circa is one of these sports books that I think has a long future ahead of it. Unlike some of these other smaller brands that are kind of popping in and trying to compete. I think, we've talked before about all these brands that are bowing out of the market. They just can't generate market share. Their business models aren't making sense. You talk about, different things that could go wrong with sports books. Circa has their model. They know what they're doing. You're going into a market that's ripe for, I think, that exact market because of the horse racing kind of background. And I think it's those small sports books, not named FanDuel, Bet365, DraftKings. Right. Those ones are going to continue and take up most of the market share. It's the small sports books that know what they're doing, that know exactly what their business model is. They're going to take the market share they can and be successful at and be okay. And then the market will evolve around that and let them be, I would think. So anyway, certainly a sports book to kind of watch as the industry matures.
Yeah, Bet River is a good example of what Pat is talking about, one of those companies. All right, Pat, thanks again for coming on. Probably going to see you later in the week, so I'll see you when I see
you. Probably. All right, bye, Craig.